I'm Sue Cooper and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I do a charcoal portrait in real time. I need to add it up, I only think it took about 45 minutes, if that. I was using a few different materials. I've got some tiny bit of willow charcoal here, but I was using a bigger stick. They're quite cheap willow charcoal, so everybody see my cat there, my studio companion. I've also got some compressed charcoal which I use. I have some chalk. I use, in the same vein as the chalk, I also have a white charcoal pencil. Comes in a kit where lots of different pencils. So I've got some dark charcoal, medium charcoal pencils and light charcoal pencils. I think they are all compressed charcoal. So I'll show you now what the benefits and the disadvantages are of using compressed charcoal and the pencils versus the willow charcoal. For blending, I like to use, this is like a stencil stippling brush, I think. I've never used it like that. I don't even know where it came from, but it's brilliant for blending in charcoal. I use a slightly lighter paintbrush as well. I dedicate this as a charcoal paintbrush because otherwise, if you use it for charcoal and then you go on to do some watercolours, then your paints will look a little bit dark. You can also use one of these blending stumps for doing small areas. These aren't great for doing large areas of blending. In fact, for blending large areas, I tend to just use a tissue. It's probably one of the best things. The tissue or the stippling brush. In terms of other materials that I use, kneadable razor. The razor is brilliant. You can get it into all of the right shapes and things, and you can pat it down, and you can like use it for lines, and it's brilliant. And this is one of my relatively new favourite toys. It's an electric eraser, and let me show you. It takes off charcoal absolutely brilliantly. So that's what I'm going to be using for this demonstration. I've picked a portrait from unsplash.com, which is a copyright-free image website. I will show you the picture that we're going to be using, maybe somewhere here, and I'll go through step by step of how I would draw one of these portraits. I'm going to be using my observational method. Now, I'm largely self-taught. I am self-taught when it comes to portraits, so it's something that I've learned and developed kind of myself because it makes sense to me. I've often tried to use the grid technique, and that's maybe how I started for some extent, but it doesn't work for me. I don't like it. It makes drawing a portrait more manageable, but you can't use it for other things. And because I love drawing people in person, this technique you can not only use from a photo, but you can use in real life as well. So it's all about measuring, all about you can use your pencil. If you're measuring someone in real life, you can sort of use your pencil like this to do some sort of comparison measurements, so you can see, right, well, here there's like roughly an eye width in between my eyes, and by taking measurements like that, you end up with a whole bunch of comparative measurements, and you can get your portrait from that way. You can also use pencils, great for doing things like working out the clock face. So from the corner of my eye, for example, to the corner of my mouth, I might think, right, well, that's about 10 past the hour. So if I check that against the portrait that I've just drawn and it's like that, I know something's gone wrong. It'll be because it's too short, something, or eyes are too wide or something. So by doing these measurements, and you get quicker and faster at doing them, it's a brilliant way of not only copying a portrait from a picture, but also doing a sketch of somebody in real life. And you can do it quite quickly once you get used to it, and I think it's all about practice, practice, practice. So I'll stop waffling and get into it. If you've got any questions, then please do let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, I am trying to grow my channel, so I would really, really appreciate it if anybody could subscribe to my channel and like and maybe make a comment. That really helps with the algorithms, and hopefully that will help me become rich and famous. So let me just show you the difference between compressed charcoal and willow charcoal. This is compressed charcoal. This is willow charcoal here. Willow charcoal, when you apply it, it's quite dark. You can blend it. Let's use a bit of tissue to blend it. And it turns out sort of like a light grey, I suppose. This is compressed charcoal, and with the same amount of pressure, you can see it sort of goes on a bit darker. And then when I blend it a little bit, sort of less smooth to blend, it's a little bit rougher. And then if I wanted to actually rub some of that off, let's try it. So this is my mechanical rubber that I use. So this is willow, and it rubs off really well. This is compressed charcoal, and it doesn't rub off quite as well. I can still see some grey underneath. It looks alright in the camera, but actually there's a bit of grey underneath. If you were to make a mistake, so you've done that line in willow charcoal and you don't want it there and you want to rub it off, you can rub it off quite reasonably easily. If I go same pressure again with the compressed charcoal, that's kind of it. So you only really want to use the compressed charcoal when you're happy with things. It's the same applies for these pencils that you get. So if I do the same kind of a test, rubbing out the this one, it's compressed charcoal in these pencils. So I would say willow charcoal's brilliant to start off with, getting everything mapped out, making sure that everything is in the right place, and then you can go over with charcoal, compressed charcoal, or a charcoal pencil later when you're sure that everything is there. Okay. Okay, so we have our man. This is our man. I found him from Unsplash, a brilliant copyright-free image bank. I've decided to go for toned paper rather than white, and that's because the toned paper really nicely captures the mid-tones, and I've got some chalk for the highlights, and I've got some white charcoal for the highlights as well. So I'll start off sketching his face. I'm going to use the observational technique that I tend to use rather than the grid. He is gridded up here, but that's because that will help me work out what is directly below his eye, what's on the same level of his nose, and that kind of thing. So I'm using it really as a guide to what's vertical and what's horizontal and what's on the same plane. So I'm going to start off, like I know that his eyes are further up than his face, and I want to cover the whole page, so I'm not going to do his eyes up here because there's only a tiny little bit of page up there and I want to get his whole face in. So I'm going to go like on the picture, a little bit of, I think they're probably around here, and I'm just going to sketch in something that could be vaguely similar size. I'm using my charcoal pencils just to get an idea. And holding the pencil is a bit weird. So when you're doing the sketching, it makes sense to do it upright to remove any sort of distortion that you get from holding the paper flat. But because I'm kind of on top of the painting, I'm like hovering over the top at the moment, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And now his eye, to sort of get a feel of how long his nose needs to be, I need to sort of put in I call it scaffolding. So this is kind of like a scaffolding, this eye bag, and he's got another eye bag under here that's sort of scaffolding. It's almost the same height as the eye width, but not quite. That is probably the same height as the eye width, but not quite. And I can specifically measure these things by
holding my pencil there, taking an eye measurement like that and just moving it down. And I can see that by moving it down, I could change that into 1, 2, 3, like his eye or his nose width is 3 eye heights. So as you do more of this, you'll get to grips with what sort of measurements make sense to you. I tend to use everything in terms of what works with the eye, and I'm not going to spend a lot of detail on anything in particular because it might be wrong, and I won't really know that until I get the whole thing in. So I know that his hair somewhere out here, he's got his above his cheek bit, he's got a wrinkle coming down like that. So the wrinkles really help you work out where things go. Above his eye, there's sort of a triangle. Eyebrows are they're never arched, really. Not unless you get someone that has terrible drawn on eyebrows. Never arched. Now, at the moment, his nose might be a bit too short. People tend to make the noses too wide. Sorry, too long. So I'm aware of that, and so I know, as a result, I have a tendency to make noses too short. So I bear that in mind, and I sort of double check that every time I do a picture. Right. Somewhere like that. And then you've got some hairs down here. Mouth is about here. Hair's here. Hair's here. Beard's coming off like this. And then he's got his forehead up here somewhere. Hair's coming down. Try and think of things in shapes as well. So just above his, like this shape of dark hair. Think of that. That comes down like that. Right, it's quite unclear. My picture is really unclear. I can't see what's eye, what's not. It's really difficult to pick anything out. So don't draw it. If you can't see it, don't draw it. This still looks like a man, even though I can't depict exactly what his eye looks like. Can't see exactly the iris and the eye, but I can see that it's definitely a man. So I'm going to just carry on defining things a bit here. And I'm going to keep standing back from it as well, just to make sure that I'm in the right, that it's in the right place. And do you see what I mean about this? These guidelines kind of help because I can see that where the nose is, that's almost where his hair stops. It's a bit further, it's a bit longer. So something like that. If you're trying to work out where to put like a lot of people when they're drawing somebody with their face turned, there's less face on this side. But we all want to sort of make faces symmetrical regardless of where we are. So the tendency will be to draw this side in as narrow as that side. But that won't give an effect of, that won't give the effect of somebody looking to one side. Sorry, that was a bit of a nose. I've got a cold at the moment, so I'm quite coldy. I'm going to start, I think, to start shading. Now I've kind of sketched him out. I'm vaguely kind of happy with him. Sometimes you really can't tell whether things are in the right place until you've sketched it out a little bit more. So I'm going to just sketch this in, just do some shading. And I've got various brushes that I can use to merge things in. I can use this brush, which is a little bit softer, leave some of the lines you can't really see, or I could use this brush, which is more like a stencil brush, and you can really work in the pigment with this one. It's quite rough on the paper. I could use some tissue. Hang on whilst I get some tissue. Okay, so I've got some tissue. So I'm using the side of the charcoal because I want to cover a large area. You can use a tissue like that. So just be careful with the kind of paper you've got. It might be that you have to be a bit more careful with. I can feel that mine's been a little bit damp. It's been sitting quite underneath the window for a while, so I don't think it's great. It's kind of ruined the paper quality a little bit. So I'm just filling in where the darks are. I know there's some darks by where the beard is. And you can sort of move your charcoal in sort of varying shapes. So I've got that like that. I can use my tissue. I'll just use my tissue for now, I think. So just these are I suppose these are the mid-tone darks, because I'm going to go later over with some, like this is compressed charcoal, for example. So when I do that, it's going to be darker and it's less smudgy. Can you see that? It doesn't smudge as well. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got everything in the right place before I do that properly. So I'm going to carry on with his beard, coming down here a little bit. He's got a completely dark side of his nose. That goes up like that. And dark for his eye area. I mean, the whole side over here is dark, so let me just put that in. So if you've got a pencil, you can use a pencil, use it like that. But you can see it will take a long time to cover a large area. So if you've got willow charcoal like this, it's a great way of covering large areas quite quickly. So I think I should go a bit further over his nose. And I'm going to blend that. If you wanted to blend specific areas, by the way, you can use a blending stump like this. So that would be good for doing like specific lines or around the eyes. I'm not going to do that now, I don't think. This time, I think I prefer the tissue, like rubbing the tissue on. I think that might be give a smoother finish. Although I don't know where I just put that down. Oh, there we go. So if you go over, it doesn't matter. I like charcoal because it's quite a free, easy medium. In fact, if you go, I'm not going to try and keep all of this white, and this will be the mid-tones anyway. So if I wanted to pull up some specific areas, I can use my rubber later. So, if there's a bit there, I've got this mechanical rubber. Mechanical? What do you call it? Electric rubber. So I'm going to carry on like that. I mean, it's all a bit shaded over here as well, but I want to keep that face in. And I really want to emphasise that this is the darkest bit. It goes down here and it's particularly dark, but it is a bit lighter there, but then it's dark around his eye again. So you can see you don't even need a lot of detail. We've only got that far. And you can already see a face kind of forming just out of the charcoal. Now I could decide to carry on, maybe I will, I could decide what I might do with this one is to this side, because there's a little bit more detail. Maybe I'll use my charcoal pencils just to help get the detail there. And remember about the shape of the eye, they're very rarely almond shaped, even though we tend to want to do almond shaped eyes. They rarely have, they're often lighter here, where the light comes down and catches this thickness of the eye. We haven't got that with him. I think it's because he's got quite deep, what do you call it when they're deep set eyes. So I think it's sort of in shadow still. And that's coming down here. So you can use a range of different pencils. You don't need to go to the shop specifically to buy anything. Everything you can work with. You could work with pastel, black pastel, and white pastels would work just as well if you've got those and you didn't want to invest in charcoal yet. Charcoal's really cheap. Really cheap. It's a great medium actually for doing things very quickly, cheaply and quickly, and it does last a long time, I find anyway. So we've got our guy with the eye here, and he's got some bits here. You can see, I can't see very well from this photo. I've only got a little A5 here. Can't see what's there very well. So I'm one of the beauties of the modern day is I've got the picture on my phone. So in a minute, I'm just going to make that bigger, and I'll be able to, even though the phone screen is smaller, I can use it to help me see what the details are. So just look at the shapes. Where's there? It goes in there, it comes out there, it's darker here, comes out here. Let's try and put in a bit more for this wrinkle. Right, they almost join at the top, can you see? Also, just something to bear in mind when you're doing this. You can keep some paper. If you're working up here, have some paper here, otherwise you'll end up smudging your work. I imagine you'll do that anyway, because you have to learn that one the hard way. It's not enough for me to tell you. I'm still doing it even now. Right, I think the nose might have been a little bit smaller. And I think... Right, this might be time to get my phone and blow up his eye a little bit so I can see what the eye looks like in a little bit more detail. But, you know, I can get away with it just being black, to be honest, because it's black on the picture. At the moment it looks a little bit weird because it's not as dark as it can go. So let me... This was a colour picture by Donald Teal, and I converted it to black and white. That always helps. It helps work out what your tones should be if it's in black and white. And tones are sort of like if you've got a green and a blue, how do you know which is sort of darker than the other? It's quite difficult if they're the same tonal range. If you convert it to black and white, they'd be the same. But say if you put the same amount of effort putting a lemon yellow, for example, on your picture, and you got really hard lemon yellow, that would be lighter in tone than maybe a light blue. So that's what you need to bear in mind when you're doing these pictures. So, excuse me. Just been to Spain and I've come back with a cold. Right, so I can see I've zoomed in here. That eye that I could barely see before. I changed the exposure as well, so I can see way more here than I could earlier. And I'm not being too specific. I mean, I could spend a lot of time going into the wrinkles, but I'm not fussed about that. It depends on what you're after. If you're after something photorealistic, that's something different. If you're after a quick sort of ability to capture someone's face, that's something else. Like that, and then it's a bit. He's got some more like wrinkles coming down. And I generally look at this space and compare it to kind of this space. And I can see that's, I think that's probably about right. He's got really dark, so I really need to big up the darkness from, he's got his eye there. I need to have some wrinkles here. And I'm going to highlight the wrinkles a little bit with some chalk in a minute. So it needs to be really darker from there. So everything here, quite a lot darker. Quite a curve of hair. It goes up here. This is really dark. I'm making him a lot bigger than he is in like in the photo. So there's a slight extra added challenge of doing it that way, but not too much. If you use this technique of comparing things against if you make sure that the eyes are the same height, you know that there's usually like an eye width in between the eyes. Usually there is. Then it doesn't matter if you can make things as big as you want. And when you're doing hair, you can just look at the big main shapes to start off with, and then you just keep working out. So I can see there's like this frond here, which has a lot of hair, comes down here. This is all, I'm going to make this all dark. This is all going to go quite dark, and it's got bits coming out. I'll add to those later, I think. It's quite messy over there. So this is all dark, this is all dark. This is some little wispy hairy bits, wispy hairs, really dark around there. This comes up. Can you see, like, look at the shape? This makes almost, to me, like a little tulip shape. So it helps if you think of shapes like other shapes that are quite recognisable. Okay, so got his hair coming down here. Can you see? And also I'm jumping around because I want to make sure that all of him is okay before I move on and perfect one particular area, because I don't want to do the most perfect eye and then realise I'm going to have to redo everything. That is soul destroying. So I'm coming down here, coming down here. He's got a hoodie or something over here. And I don't know, some sort of strap. I love this guy. I think he's just the most characterful face. I'm very grateful for sites like Unsplash that let you have these copyright-free images to sort of look. And there's loads of different portraits that you can use, portrait ones. So I might now start adding this compressed charcoal. Compressed charcoal looks a lot like the willow charcoal, but once you get to know the difference, like I don't know whether you can see here, this is thinner, slightly lighter, and this is darker and a little bit fatter, usually. But what you get in the pencils is compressed charcoal, so it just gives an extra oomph, I think, in terms of darkness, but you need to make sure that everything is in the right place, because it's an absolute pain to try and get rid of charcoal, compressed charcoal. So if you've got something wrong, that's it, staying wrong forever. It's difficult to rub out, it's difficult to merge. And I can use my tissue just to blend it up a little bit. I'm not too worried about spreading some of that grey, because, you know, actually taking some of that darkness over here is a good way of getting a little bit of shading over here. So I didn't really talk about paper earlier. You can use whatever. I tend to use watercolour paper. If you use watercolour paper, then it's got a little bit of a grain. So sometimes the charcoal tends to sit in the grain. You can go for slightly hotter hot press watercolour paper, and it's nice and thick. But you know, there's also multimedia paper that you can use. Charcoal's quite forgiving, so you can use, different things. This is like I was talking about the eye, and when you might use this kind of instrument, that would be now. So, like I've got my eye up here. I can see that it sort of, because it's hooded, comes up here, and it's darker where it's been hooded, lighter here. He's got a bit of a glint in his eye, which I might do in a minute. And then he's got his hairs coming out. Gets darker here. One of the annoying things about the pencils is you have to keep sharpening them. I am not a fan of sharpening things. It's boring. Shame they can't invent something that just stays permanently sharp. I do, when I'm using pencils, I tend to use these mechanical pencils, and they are maintain a pretty sharp points most of the time. So I'm looking at his nose, looking at where it goes. He's got some hair starting about there, comes down. And now I could use, I don't want it, in fact I'm going to bring some of that darkness to his eye, because it's not like it's white. All of it's dark around here where he's got his eyebrow. I feel like I want to be quite delicate with this paper. It's kind of like sugar paper, and it's quite, I feel like it can rip quite easily. So, there we go. Our man is coming together. Let's do some more dark under his nose. And what I might do, like I know that that's white beard, and you might be tempted to want to keep it white, but it's actually it's really dark. It's just got little highlights. So I'm just going to carry on with the dark. Just make sure that it sort of fades out a little bit, and then I'll be able to add highlights over the top. So spread that down a little bit. And just keep comparing the darks. So is that dark the same as this dark? It probably is. So I think I might start using my pencil a little bit more to get in some get more details in. And I can tell that sort of coming up a bit like that. It's coming like that. It's going quite down his eye. I don't really want too much detail for his eye because, you know, can't really see it too much. He's got great wrinkles, this guy. Wrinkles, I think, help. Did I tell you that? I think they help place features. Yeah. So if you're wanting to know where, you know, the top of the forehead is, it will help you if you work out where this wrinkle is and then where this wrinkle is, and you can sort of, by doing a lot of comparisons between where things are, it will help, you know, build things. Let's try, I'm going to add a little bit more shading. So most of our darks kind of vaguely in place now. And now we've got the option of either putting in some chalk, or we can do both. We can do a little bit of, I've got this putty eraser, and it might be that I think there needs to be a little bit here, a little highlight, so I can add that in. Again, I'm really worried about my paper because it just feels like it's taking off the top level layer. So be careful of your paper as well. You've got to judge what you can and what you can't do with it. I think sugar paper works quite well if you treat the sugar paper well. If you leave it under the window like I did all week, it's don't think they like it. So yeah, just add, you could add, for like a little glint in the eye. A little glint in the eye might be best with something like this, or like a electronic eraser. You can get like little more finer points, you see. And then over here you might want to use it again for the bits of the beard, moustache. So we could do some like this. And then we could also do some with our white charcoal. And we've got chalk as another option. You see the chalk is like, that really pops out a lot more. So yes, you can just have a play with what works for you. I think I want to darken up this bit of his face. Let's do a little bit of, you know. And maybe now I'll start applying lots of the white. Yes, before I put the highlights in, I really want to make sure that this is as dark as I'm going to have it, because going back around it's going to be really irritating. So I'm going to just make sure that's dark. And I can do a little, you know, follow again where the shapes are, so I can see there's a bit of a shape here. I'm not being, you know, if I get a bit of his hair in the wrong place, who cares? I'm trying to capture the sense of this guy, who he is. You know, he's obviously had a hard life. I want to capture that sort of thing. I would also say try and generally try and go in the same sort of direction, or either go in the same direction, or like you're hatching, you can always hatch, you know, like this over here. Example of me hatching in the same direction. I mean, there's different shading techniques, but what I found quite messy in the past is if people go like that here and like that here and like that, and I mean, it's a different technique. It's, you know, whatever floats your boat. But if you want something that looks a little bit neater at the end of the day, then, you know, do it that way. Do a bit of hatching. In fact, it's a bit darker even up here. Charcoal is messy. It's really messy. You can't do charcoal without having to have some sort of bath or something after. It doesn't help that I keep dropping my charcoaly bit of tissue on the floor because it's covered in charcoal and keeps marking my my floor. So you can get hard lines here. Again, make sure for the beard and things you're following exactly where the beard is. And there's a whole lighter bit on this side, so we can do exactly like we did with the charcoal. Just really go in where that's light. It's got a light bit over here. It's got a light bit over here. I'm going to add just a bit of black over here just to balance things up. Right, how's he coming? I might also let me try and find. I'm going to try and find a separate bit of tissue for the whites, because I can just blend them in the same way that I did with the charcoal. Blending, 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 blending. Blending, 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 blending. And yeah. This is a bit more layered over here because I've gone over it darkly, but I've added a bit of white over the top, so it still works. Doing it like that. You could do with a little bit more shading over here. And then, you know, you can keep on adding highlights. He's got a bit of shading over here. Now, there's something about this eye over here that I'm not happy with this one. I think it's just because it's too light still. You can still see too much. So I'm just going to try and merge it a little bit more. And maybe add a little bit more shading. I just went to zoom in the... I just went to zoom in on the picture. Didn't help. Sorry if my head is in the way. It feels like my head's going to be in the way doing this. Anyway, there's a bit of it. Where did that bit of paper go so I'm not smudging stuff? There. Put that there. So he's got one wrinkle that kind of goes all the way up here and one wrinkle that goes kind of down, and then just a series of like little bumper-y wrinkles going from a smaller bit, comes out here, quite a hard line. So think about your hard lines and your soft lines. He's got some beards, hairs coming straight out. Looks like they're coming out of his nostril almost. Didn't mean to do that there. So as well as the thin, the lines for the hair, what am I going to do here? Right over here, where his face is, his mouth. I'm just going to do a bit wiggly because, I mean, really, it's not the mouth. Like, don't draw a mouth. Draw what you see, which is just a lot of white stuff and then some big bit of blurry black stuff. So as soon as you get used to drawing, the sooner you can get used to drawing what's there and not what you think is there, you'll be a better drawer. And you'll be able to capture things a little bit easier. This technique that I'm using now, doing the observational technique, I call it anyway, is great for, you can do this with people as well, like live people when they're sitting in front of you. Like everything is the same principle that applies. do a little bit more over here. I think you could do with a little bit more interesting kind of wrinkles. Or like me bigging up the wrinkles at least. He looks a bit smooth over here, doesn't he? So maybe I'll add some hair as well. I'll just lightly go over like that to add some shading to the hair. And then maybe I could just go over with a little bit of with my chalk, like what I also quite like to do is add a little bit of a background. So how's that looking at the moment? I mean, it's not looking too bad. So I might add in a bit of this white background. I could also go for a different colour, go a bit wacky, do some pink or whatever, something a bit interesting. But just for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go white. And this is going to be white, and then I'll add a little bit of dark on this side. Because it's kind of nice, his hair is dark or light on this side. So if you've got a bit of grey background, then it will show up better. So, hang on. Sorry if you can't see this. Oh yeah, and I'll just merge it around, I'll bring it around. And then just do brush it together or use a tissue paper or something. So, I think I could probably do with a little bit more. I was just using the remnants of the willow charcoal. Let me just go in a slightly different direction. If you go in one direction, sometimes you just get lots of lines and it looks annoying. If you then go over the top of it in the other direction, it seems to counteract some of the strange lines. You also, it's a good idea to have it on a flat bit of paper or a flat bit of table. So let's carry on here. Here. So then we've got more of an option to do some whites on this side, you see? And it just has a bit more of an impact. I do need to try and make it a little bit darker. So up here needs to go a lot darker, really. And actually here. Then I can either use the tissue or I can just blend it maybe with this blending stump a little bit more. I'm still a bit worried about this blending stump because it just doesn't feel nice on the paper. I'm just really worried it's going to go through. And I can, where he's got that nice like quiff. So yes, if you're doing this in real life, it's the same technique. So it's a really good thing to learn, this sort of observational technique. I've heard, I mean, when people start off, they often use the grid technique. I think I'm going to do mine quite sketchy. So, right, what you could do right now is fill in some of these. So you've got, maybe there's a bit of white there and you just fill in around it. Or there's a bit of white there and another bit of white there and you fill in around it. It takes more time than I like. I'm a very impatient portraitist. There's like a little hint of oh yeah, I really like these eye wrinkles. I'm going to do the eye wrinkles. Eye wrinkles I might try and pick off a little bit, maybe with the electric rubber. Maybe I'll give him a glint. You have to be careful with glints, like where are you going to put them? Have to sort of get them in the right place. So, building up, there's generally, the wrinkles are kind of light on top and there's a darker bit underneath where it's sort of in shadow. It looks a bit too big, that line. A bit too big and obvious. If something doesn't look right to you on the actual picture either, you don't have to stick religiously to it. You're making artwork. You're not doing an exact representation. I mean, it's not a photo. My artwork is not about capturing someone so that it could be a photo, because you've got photos for that. So, although there's a massive technique to it, and it's worth, you know, trying to sort of follow up on that, and sort of practice getting the technique, or the challenge of trying to represent something that looks completely real. It doesn't, it's, in terms of producing an artwork, a piece of artwork that you might want to hang on your wall, you kind of want something that's a little bit different, I think, from photos. That's just my, you know, just my style. I want my picture to look quite sketchy, actually, so I'm going to maybe just make him look a little bit, bring him around like that a little bit. A bit of pencil under there. It doesn't help, does it? Right, where was I? This guy. That was a little bit of jumper. And it's coming down like that, and then I might just sketch around and have a bit of hair. More hair coming up like that. Yeah, I'm vaguely happy with that. I might have a quick fiddle around, but you get the idea of what I'm doing, and I'll post the finished article. Okay? Any questions? Please write them in the comments, or if you've got any of your own tips of how to do charcoal painting. So, yeah, let me know.